Welcome, friends of poetry. Nice to see you again today. I'm sitting here in my kitchen looking out on the big world where we've had about 3 inches of snow so far today, with more promised for later. Since I'm pretty comfortable right here, I guess I shouldn't care about that. I don't have any place to go other than this, so here we are. Today's program is a congeries of poets and poems. There's no particular theme, but I'm going to try to introduce the themes that the poems have inherent in themselves. And there's sort of an overriding theme for each of these. They all end with a brooding finality, what I would call a brooding finality. Most of you know by now, if you've been with me a while, that I have very much liked the poetry of the late John Crow Ransom, no relative of mine. But you may remember that he was a professor at Kenyon College for many years and was known not only for his poetry, but for his literary criticism. I find the first compelling, but reading the critical essays is, for me, a tiresome project. Because unlike his poems, it takes him forever to get to his point in the... I've been accused of that in my poems, too. But with his literary essays, it's sort of like reading a Russian novel. But enough of that. Here's a poem of John Crow Ransom's called Parting Without a Sequel. It details the end of a love affair. And here it is. It's in the book. I've shown you this cover before, which was designed 60 years ago by the late Bradbury Thompson, who's revered in Topeka and has a room dedicated to him at Washburn University. So here we go with Parting Without a Sequel. She has finished and sealed the letter at last, which he so richly has deserved, with characters venomous and hatefully carved, and nothing could be better. But even as she gave it, saying to the blue-capped functioner of doom, into his hands, she hoped the leering groom might somewhere lose and leave it. Then all the blood forsook the face. She was too pale for tears, observing the ruin of her younger years. She went and stood under her father's vaunting oak, who kept his peace in wind and sun, and glistened stoical in the rain, to whom she listened if he spoke. And now the agitation of the rain rasped his sere leaves, and he talked low and gentle, reproaching the wan daughter by the lintel, ceasing and beginning again. Away went the messenger's bicycle. His serpent track went up the hill forever. And all the time she stood there hot as fever and cold as any icicle. I think you can see the battling going on here between the woman and her letter, and the larger battle between the woman and her former lover. She's not exactly happy with what she did, but it's done, and there will be no sequel. The next poem is by Ruth Maus. a gal from a Kansas ranch who spent probably too much time at Smith College and caught what we called a fatal infection with poetry, which causes a love of reading it and the challenge and love of writing it as well. Her recent book, Valentine, contains poems, as it says on the cover, and they're wonderful poems, which often, like the one we just read, contain irony and a dichotomy between things we like to do and their consequences. So I'm going to start off with a poem called The Sun Worshippers. At the pool, the bronzed assemble, greased and horizontal, in a bake-off of burnt offerings to their temperamental god. Flesh and little snips of cloth held up by love and lycra. Sweat bakes to musk, a baste and a crust over muscles and muttony thighs. Brown to a blush, never a blister. Time to turn over on the concrete altar. Someday soon, a little cancer cloud will unfold like a serviette, like an origami of sepia doom, as the sacrifices and brute faith are consumed. But today, the righteousness of salt on a monster margarita sings psalm and hallelujah enough. So, I think many of us have gone through this, even those of us who are far too blonde for our bodies to appreciate the sun. And we soon learn that the sun, while it's a friend of the world, is not necessarily a friend to our skin. So this poem ends with a brooding quality, like I warned you they were all going to do. But there's another poem here by Ruth that I want to pick up on and read you. It's called Dove Season. Little gray dove, how did you decode the foreigner's thrumming? I am so lonely to accept its invitation. It was just a white plastic bag snared in the maple tree, the ubiquitous flag of a nation surrendering to trash. But you perched at its side for hours, a splendorous lady taking tea with the chateau's pale host while pretending to admire the tapestries. When you finally collected your veins and your feathers, your coos and your flutters, you flew south, and it was over. The puff of your soft exit, the extinguishment of a candle after the party expires. But the white bag calls out, "Come back," with its cannon shot whipping and snapping, its ugly song of longing, immune to uncertain seasons and their fickle little gray memories. Yes, that's a poem that ends with a brooding finality. Now, next I'm going to read one of my own poems from my book of several years ago called Immortal Prairie and Other Poems. And this one is one I don't think I've read in public, if you can call this show public. And the name of it is The Pike. I think you'll see as I read it and you listen to it, why it fits in with the theme of today's little meeting. The pike in deep water still sees his prey and then engulfs it in a stabbing swirl, quickly returning to the place he stays, slowly fanning water with a soft tail curl. His world is water, and he does not know about him is a place of wind and air, where sun so bright would blind him like a foe. The lake for him is full of smells and fair. And so it is that when the lure comes by, the one that is more real than any tiny shad, scintillating and reflecting from the pike's walleye, he's soon caught thrashing by the prey he thought he had, and bundled to another world and blinded now, suspended not by water but by hook and line. He has no power just to swim away and go back to his water world so well defined. The bright abyss that beckons every creature arrived audaciously and unexpected. The pike is now a menu's leading feature, the flesh and bone, most carefully dissected. One reader said to me, "I'll never go fishing again after reading that." I answered, "Do you like to eat fish?" "Yes," she said. And I said, "Well, then, somebody has to do it." That's it for today. Our poem about poems with brooding finality. And I hope you'll join me next week. So goodbye and good luck. I hope you notice my smiling daughter over my shoulder. She's always listening to this program. So don't miss it yourself. Bye now.